Oh my God. If Tanaka's blind, how the hell's he been driving the car?
Hi, it's Romania Black, and I kid you not. I woke up in the middle of the night after watching episode 4, and I was like, wait a minute, if Tanaka's blind, how's he been driving the car this whole time? We're on episode 5 of The Summer Hikaru Died, and I'm sure people watching have been like, Romania. But you know what? That's okay. As I'm recording this, episode 1 has premiered on YouTube, and I have been blown away by the support and the views and y'all's comments, and I'm just very humbled and very grateful and very thankful that Plor, my moderator, has been able to chuck through all the comments for that first episode. There was like 100 comments, and I was like, Plor, maybe we need to like check these twice a week. She was like, yeah, maybe. So I'm so thankful. I have a couple that I want to go through and talk about, and then a comment from episode 2 on Patreon that I want to go through. But I'm glad you all are okay with me recording ahead. And there were a couple comments I was like, wait till episode 4 and I will address what you're talking about. So, but anyway, I guess we'll find out if Tanaka is blind and how he's able to maybe use his exorcist powers to drive the car. Who knows, in a future episode. But Lynn Goody 986 for episode 1 said, your reaction to the Daokusei manga made me realize a potential homage this show is doing by the main character's name being Hikaru and the teacher being Harasan. I did not, when they said Harasan in episode 1, it did not click. But yes, if you don't know Daokusei, it's one of my favorite series. It's on that shelf back there. I love it. I did a review of the manga, and I'm going to do a reaction to the latest home volume when I get it this fall. I've pre-ordered it. But the main character, one of them's name is Hikaru, which is how I know it means light. And then the teacher that they have is named Harasan. So I'm like, that's a cool homage. And you can definitely see it because the other character, Ryo, in that series looks a lot like Yoshiki. Like Hikaru in Daokusei looks nothing like Hikaru in this series. But Yoshiki kind of looks like Ryo a little bit. So I'm like, I see the homage. I see it. So that's really cool. So thank you, Lynn Goody, for pointing that out. Bunny Boogie, or Bunny Bougie, 3842 says, it's funny enough you said that it reminds you of Jujutsu Kaisen. One of the main animators was Ryohei Takeshita. Not only is Ryohei directing The Summer Hikaru Died, but he also wrote the script and is doing the storyboarding, which is pretty rare for animation directors to do. You can really tell how much passion the people working on this have. Yes, I love that. I mean, I think Cygames is the studio this is through, which they're doing Uma Musume, so they're get that gotcha money. But I really like that. I like the idea. You can definitely see the influence from when they worked on Jujutsu Kaisen in this series. You can see that influence, and I love Jujutsu Kaisen, so I'm 100 times here for it. I'm like, yes, please. So it's a lot of fun. That's really cool to note. So thank you, Bunny. Dan Cat 327 says, fun fact. Apparently in Japan, it's common to watch horror movies in the summer because scary things give you a chill in your body, and the heat of the summer helps against that. It's why in anime, there's commonly tests of courage that happen during the summer too. I would say that horror movies are pretty prevalent in the US too. I always think of Jaws, which is like the ultimate summer horror movie. I rewatched it for the 50th anniversary. It holds up. Jaws holds up really good, and it is freaky. There's a couple shark attacks that I was like, oh, I never want to go in the ocean again. Cool. So if you've not seen Jaws, highly recommend. But I've seen the test of courage. The one I think of the most is in Kuroko's Basketball. There was an extra audio drama that I listened to where they did a test of courage during a summer camp. The most random thing, but I definitely remember it. So thank you, Dan Cat, for pointing that out. Algumalgum for episode 1 says, I'm so glad you noticed Hikaru's name means light. There's an interesting piece of trivia there that might interest the English teacher in you. And I was like, go on. Hikaru's name is written with the kanji for light, which in turn evokes the associated logographic connections and meanings, of course. This is something that doesn't translate to English subtitles or to the audio at all, but there's actually a distinction when Yoshiki talks and thinks about Hikaru the human or Hikaru, the entity. When referring to the human, Yoshiki's speech and thought bubbles use his proper name written in kanji. When referring to the entity, the name is written in katakana, which strictly conveys only the pronunciation. Among the uses for katakana are the transliteration of foreign words and loan words into Japanese. The entity, who is foreign to human existence and quite literally took him on permanent loan, being referred to through katakana feels very appropriate. And Mary CeeLo 77 added on to that with their comment saying, this could be helpful too. A little detail that I think they couldn't possibly adapt in the anime that helps us separate the two Hikarus as a fandom. Yoshiki, when he ever refers to the new Hikaru, is always written in quotes in the English translation in haranga rather than kanji, which you can't really adapt into any other languages. So fans often differentiate them as OG Hikaru and Hikaru. So that's really cool. I love that. That's something that, honestly, the cool thing about multiple mediums is there are some things you can't adapt from manga to anime, and that type of distinction is very much that case. If I think of it in English translations, I remember reading something where there was a similar situation, and instead of the quotes, they put it in italics. So it'd be like one name and then the name in italics, and those were the two different, that's how you differentiated. And in comic books, they do that sometimes too. So it's really cool to see how that medium presents it. But yeah, it is lost in translation when you have it translated into an adaptation that's animated. I guess the only way to do that would be to do the quotations when you have the subtitles. That'd probably be the only way. But yeah, so I like calling the entity, instead of Anuki, I call him Hikaru because it's just convenient because he's using Hikaru's body. So if I call him Hikaru, know that I know the difference. And then Siri2552 for episode 2 says, oh yes, I was hoping to see your reaction to the gym closet scene. Yoshiki's feelings are clearly conflicting him. He knows he's not Hikaru, but still wants to be with him, and he doesn't know what to do. It's so sad. I don't like him being so insecure about himself. I hope he speaks with Rie now that he has a chance to talk with someone else. And talk with her he has. And I feel like Yoshiki, as of last episode, was just starting to emerge from his own cicada shell and being comfortable around Hikaru and being like, you know what? He's not the Hikaru that I loved, but he is showing affection towards me. So when life gives you lemons, you acknowledge that they're actually a possible deity and that they want to protect you, I guess. So, but yes. Also, I wanted to point out that the gym closet scene, I like it it has kind of a double entendre where on the one hand, you have literally a character in the closet questioning their sexuality, and they are literally in a closet, both figuratively and literally. But the fact that it's a gym closet and you talk about kind of stereotypes of masculinity and how men are portrayed to need to be muscular or fit. And here you have these two characters in a gym closet, which instead of getting fit, they're doing arm day in a different way than most. So yeah, but I am absolutely in love with this series. I cannot believe we are officially at the halfway point. I'm like, no, I don't want to be at the halfway point. We just started. Why? So the only thing is that by the time you all get to this episode, and by the time we as the audience on my channel get to the end of the series, or the end of the season rather, it will only be a few weeks after it. So we get to prolong as much as we can. But I'm ready to spill the tea with y'all as we dive into this episode. So thank you all so much for your kind words and support. I greatly appreciate it. But we're going to start The Summer Hikaru Died, episode 6. And we're going to do that here. Or episode 5, right? Episode 5? Am I correct in this? Yes, episode 5. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're not at the halfway point yet. Let's be real. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's begin. Ooh, you know what this series is giving me? You know what vibe this series is giving me? In the craziest ways, I was thinking about this as soon as the episode was over. I'm like, this series reminds me of something. Or what I want this series to be reminds me of something. And it took me a second to think about it. And then I think I figured it out. This is basically if this were the adolescent and yet supernatural version of fake. And if you don't know what Fake is a 1990s BL yaoi that's one of my favorites, and it's about two detectives who work together who are very open about their sexuality. It's not hard to figure out. The rest of the cast in the entire series are like, yeah, we get it. But they work in a city, and they're detectives, and they solve crimes, and then they also have a romance on the side, and it's both a crime drama and a romance together. But the romance they have to work towards, and then they communicate and develop the relationship, blah, 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 blah. But they're partners, right? And I realized, especially when we got into the part starting where Hikaru was going after the wig ghost, I was like, that's kind of what I want these two to end up as. And I know this series is ongoing, but I feel like the mangaka has a good, easy out, right? And I think it's very intentional that this manga and series as a whole is not about the ending of where we get to. It's about the journey and the experience and the coming of age and the discovering your sexuality and exploring and figuring out how to navigate sexual avenues, because a lot of teenagers go through that, right? Even if, teenagers aren't sexually active, they're hearing about it, they're seeing it, they're interacting with it, they're going through puberty. So it's about confronting all of those feelings and figuring out how to deal with that. But then I like this kind of undercurrent that this series is starting to suggest, especially in this episode, that what's next? What do we do later? And the characters are kind of discussing that, and we're going to break it down. But what I would love for this series to become is like Fake, where these two characters, Hikaru, the entity, and Yoshiki, go and solve cases and fight ghosts and take them out and save people. That would be kind of cool. And, Tanaka's doing it, but Hikaru is a lot more of a convenient ghost buster than Tanaka, because Hikaru doesn't have to worry about his organs as much, but we're going to talk about that. So, maybe he'll need a blood transfusion. Who knows? But we'll talk about it in this episode. But I just realized their dynamic reminds me a lot of the main characters of Fake. They remind me a lot of the main characters, even though the story and the characters themselves are very different. There's just something about it. I would like for Hikaru and Yoshiki to become like the two main guys in Fake in terms of their relationship and then what they do throughout the day. And then everybody else around them is kind of like, yeah. Although I feel like everyone around them should probably keep thinking Hikaru is a human. Freak out if they find out he's an entity, which Tanaka's gonna freak out. Y'all know that. Let's talk about this episode, shall we? Let's dive into this episode. I just want to get that off my chest, because as soon as I was looking at the ED, I was like, that's what this reminds me of. It finally hit me. Yeah. But anyway, so I will give the show a lot of kudos for some tasteful, because again, one thing that I think the show, the reason why we don't see as much romantic elements outright is because the two main characters are underage. They're minors. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody should see that. So right now it's just exploration, right? Sexual innuendo, exploration, but it's not explicit. In Fake, it's not sexy all the time, but when it is, they're adults, so you understand. But here, they're kids, so we need to make that appropriate. And I'm very glad that this series and the mangaka is very appropriate with the sister, because in some horror, if you've watched horror films before, sometimes women are exploited for their bodies. I've seen enough B-movie schlock to see women get assaulted and groped and stuff by evil entities, or getting possessed, and being possessed involves getting your boob grabbed or something crazy like that. That seems rather gratuitous. And I like the sister was not harmed in any way, shape, or form. The sister in this episode is actually one of the smartest horror characters in a series, where she was like, hey, there's a ghost here, mom. And she actually tells somebody about it. Because how many times have you watched a horror film where the person's like, oh, it's a ghost, but I'm not going to tell anybody because I don't want to seem like a crazy person. No, this girl is like, there is a damn grudge monster in my bathroom. I'm not going in there. It's so realistic. Yes. And she's a teenager, so she's like, I'm not going in that. Girl had the most realistic, realistic reaction that I've seen in a while. And I was like, girl, I do not blame you. That whole thing with the hair and looking over and seeing the hair under the thing. No. Also, it hit me that she is right. Their family all have short hair, which I hadn't noticed before. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. So we see on the calendar that it is currently July because there's the number 7 on the calendar. That's July, and Yoshiki asks to borrow a bandana, and she's like, well, why don't you just use a handkerchief? And she's like, ask Hikaru, and he's like, okay. And then girl is so smart where she's like, let me out of here. There's a monster in here. No, thank you. The OP is insanely good. I love it. The one thing is, I feel like we're getting a lot in the OP that we got in this episode, like with the hair and the brain cones, which we'll talk about, the brain trees. I feel like we've covered a lot in the OP in these first 5 episodes, which I'm excited about because that means that a lot of it's going to be mystery from here on in. Mystery. So one thing that's in the sidelines as we go that's kind of funny that this teacher does is that he's still not impressed with their singing. He's just like, I was expecting Tony Award performances by now, and he's just not getting it. So it's kind of funny. Also, his tracksuit and my shirt kind of match, so we're being twinsies today. But then we get to frying the chicken, which, okay, I'm going to make a little quick note. We have Tanaka. I believe. No, we don't have Tanaka. The one kid in the class, I keep wanting to call him Tanaka because he looks like Tanaka from Haikyuu. We're going to put Tanaka up there. We're going to keep him up there, though. So we have a boy classmate. I forget his name. We have boy classmate who has a crush on Yuki. On Yuzuki or whatever her name is. He has a crush on her, which is cute. And they kind of, if you told me that they were going to end up, here's the thing. I'm going to feel bad for either Asako or the guy character because I feel like Asako has either a platonic friendship with Yuzu, a platonic friendship, or Yuki, or if she doesn't have a platonic friendship, she wants to date Yuki, and they're just not coming to terms with it. But if you told me that she secretly is crushing on him, or they're the stereotypical, like, he ribs her and annoys her, and she's like, oh, I don't like you, you're annoying, but secretly she likes him. If you told me that, I'd be fine. Either way, either Asako or this guy are going to have their feelings hurt, because polyamory is not a thing, apparently, in this series. So somebody's going to have their heart broke. But they've not given us enough context of Asako saying that she likes Yuki for it to be a thing. So, I don't know. But we learn in this episode that the guy has a crush on Yuki. He has a crush on her, and he's just, like, excited about frying the chicken. I love their aprons. Her apron has the teddy bears on it. Yoshiki's has the flowers, which is cute, and he borrowed this little handkerchief that has the fish on it, which is hilarious. And he's in there. So we get in this scene where it opens up from Hikaru's perspective, where he's watching Yoshiki fiddle with the chicken, right? And I do love that this series, the manga, it's shown it before when they went in the forest. There was a little box of the sound effects and stuff to show that it's the joke. It's really cute. But yeah, and then his like says like bad blood on it and has a dragon, which is so fun. And he's like, should I chop this cabbage? Not with the meat knife. They're going to go back to that cabbage line later, right? So we have the fried chicken. Their fried chicken turned out great. I like that they're in this culinary class. They're just making fried chicken and rice stuff, which is cute. And she's like, we have to say thanks for the food. And he's like, quit acting like my mom. And she gets kind of... That moment where she kind of got like a little offended by him saying, quit sounding like my mom, that's what made me question that she likes him, because that seems like, you know, if the last thing you want to hear from your crush is that you sound like a mom or their mom, right? That's the last thing you want to hear. So maybe she does like him. I don't know. Maybe she does like him. Maybe she also likes Asako. Who knows? Bisexuality's a thing. And they chide each other about saying grace. I like that while they're arguing, Yoshiki's like, thanks for the food. Like he still prays over the food. Also, I love that Hikaru points out that his little bandana looks like a ghost bandana. How fitting, right? How fitting that it won't go up over his head. I'd be like Yoshiki. I can't wear bandanas, so they would probably do the exact same thing for me. Also, Hikaru with the black dragon apron. I mean, and he says your bandana's sticking up like one of those ghost headbands. Now, it's still Yoshiki getting used to Hikaru, knowing that I like that this show portrays it as still being somewhat of a challenge for Yoshiki to separate that he's seeing Hikaru in the flesh, but knows that it's not actually his friend Hikaru, that it's the entity. I like that there's, this series does a good job of realistically portraying how difficult that reasoning would be and how it's not going to be like a one, even though Yoshiki makes progress in his relationship with Hikaru, it's still not perfect. And I like that the show portrays that. So Hikaru's like, my group overfried the chicken. It looks like a black hole. And he's like, yeah, it looks like dark matter. And so he's like, it tastes like the underside of a truck. Do you want some? And he's like, no, of course not. He's like, I've got good chicken. And so there's this little moment of tension between the two of them where Hikaru's like, what were you doing with the chicken earlier? Why were you staring at it on your hand? And so he's like, no horseplay around the hot oil. And he's like, why do you look all serious? And he's like, oh, well, I mean, luckily for Yoshiki, Yuki and the guy are too busy arguing with one another to pay attention to their conversation. Because I was like, say that a little louder and everybody's going to be wondering what the hell you're talking about. He said the chicken kind of felt like when I reached inside you. And Hikaru is like, oh, you're thinking about that. So let's establish a couple things about Hikaru. Because Hikaru's like, he's like, So Hikaru's, and I'm going to put Hikaru in quotation marks. Not OG Hikaru, but entity Hikaru is... He is all about connecting, and we'll put connecting in quotation marks, with Yoshiki. All about connecting with him. And obviously, it's an entity. It feels good. It likes to feel good. They established in the episode prior that the god or deity that we think Hikaru might possibly be liked festivals. It liked offerings. It was kind of like a little hedonistic, where it liked people celebrating it, and it liked the praise. Might have a praise kink on her hands. And so, the idea that Hikaru's like, oh, you're thinking of me. Oh, you're thinking of doing that with me. Oh, do you want to repeat that? Like, he would, he seems rather interested in it. He very much seemed like a cat in that moment, which was fun. He's like, that's where your mind was? And so he says, well, feeling around quietly by yourself. And Yoshiki's like, what are you laughing at? I like that Yoshiki gets offended, but the thing of it is, Hikaru's not making fun of him, like bullying him. He's just pointing out, like, he's like, hey, isn't that kind of funny that you're thinking about me? Why didn't you say something, And Yoshiki, of course, is getting a little flustered by it, which is funny because you have Yoshiki and Hikaru having this little pseudo argument, and then right across from them you have the guy and Yuki having this kind of pseudo argument, and they're both two couples of people that like each other, right? So we'll see. And he's like, oh, give me that nugget. And she's like, no, pause off. And then she says, oh, I mean, it's fine. Now, when Hikaru looks at Yoshiki, the way he looks down at him, being like, do you want to do it again? That was pretty, it was a little seductive there. A little bit. I could see why Yoshiki would agree. Because, I mean, when somebody that's looking like your best friend you had a crush on is looking at you being like, you want to go fool around? He's like, what do you have to say? And he's like, do you want to try touching me again? And Yoshiki's like, what? And then that's when they ask where Hikaru is. Now, I always like when they line people up with numbers, because it's like 5, 7, 1, 9, 6, 4. I don't think it has any meaning. I'm too used to link click. In link click, every image that has numbers like that in a row would have a significance. But although you could say that says May 7th, 1964, is there anything... That's the day before my birthday. May 7th, 1964. Is there anything that's worth happening that happened on that day? Any important events that happened on that day? I'm going to say if Japan had any famous events. There was an earthquake in 1964, but I don't think anything happened on May 7th, 1964 that would be noteworthy. Doesn't seem to be, except there was the Olympics in 1964, but that's about it. I just thought that maybe there could be something to those numbers, but they asked where Hikaru is, and he said, oh, he promised he'd show up today. Lies. Liza Minnelli. Nope. Instead, we're in a classroom now. We've gone from we're out of the closet. Boom. And we're in the classroom now where it says do not enter. And he's like, I've got club today, you know. And he's like, don't rush me. I got to psych myself up for it. So essentially, Yoshiki has moved on from curiosity to exploration. Right? He was curious. Now he's like, okay, I want to go back and explore and, you know, see what ends up happening. And then he puts inside and he's expecting something really, the moan that he makes when he puts his hand inside, I was like, what are we doing, show? But then he's like, oh, it's almost like he was expecting, he's like, oh, it's not as bad as before. And he's like, oh, are you getting used to it? Now, in this moment, the entity tries to pour down him and get on him, and he says it's just like before. And the entity is like wanting to connect to his mind. So what are we going to do with that? Because it's like getting up towards his brain. Like it's not going inside of him necessarily anymore, like it was the last time in the classroom when he was on the floor. It's not going like in his nose or anything, but instead it's like reaching up and feels like it's trying to touch where his brain is, right? And there's like a little light shining there, which the light before was by his heart, so I don't think it's the same thing. But it's trying to reach into his consciousness, and that's where he says, stop. And meanwhile, the guys have already gone and started playing. And he's like, what did you just do? And he's like, I touched you back a little. So this is a very interesting scene because he's like, you touched me, so I tried to touch you. And the thing about it is, Yoshiki does not have and I'm going to say it this way, and you're going to be like, Romania, and I'm going to just say it this way. Just bear with me. Just work with the semantics with me. Let me say this and let me explain it. But Yoshiki does not have, for lack of a better phrasing, he doesn't have a hole that Hikaru can stick his hand up into that's readily accessible right now. And that's the best way to phrase it. That's consensual. So he's like, oh, well, you were touching the deep parts of me, so I thought I would just do the same to you. And the only way I could do that would be to reach up into your consciousness. It almost seems like they're trying to do like a mind meld, like a Vulcan mind meld is what it feels like that they're trying to do. And I wonder if at some point Yoshiki is going to connect with Hikaru, because it seemed like last time when he started to connect with Hikaru, he started to learn about the endos of the past. I wonder if Yoshiki will put two and two together and decide to willingly connect with Hikaru to find out about that past. We'll see. I don't know. I'm torn between if Hikaru is able to access Yoshiki's consciousness, would it hurt Yoshiki or would it like combine them, you know? And we're going to go into what Ree told him a little later. But he's like, I touched you back a little bit, right? And he's like, you got to get used to it. Now, I feel like there's two parts to that. You got to get used to it, because the good thing is Hikaru is consenting. So if Yoshiki says stop, he does stop, which good. But he's like, well, you got to get used to it. And then Yoshiki kind of calls him out. And he's like, do I have to get used to it because it makes you feel good and you want me to just, pleasure you whenever? And Hikaru's like, what? I mean, he's like, are you being real with me? I had a feeling, but are you doing this because it makes you feel good? And Hikaru's like, well, is that a problem? And that's when Yoshiki says you can't be doing stuff that makes other people uncomfortable. So, Hikaru, I do like this idea of sexual exploration, because now we're into this like sexual exploration. So Yoshiki, it has been discovered that he now knows what makes Hikaru feel good. We've discovered that already. But, Hikaru, being not a human, was like, well, I thought me touching your consciousness would make you feel good. And Yoshiki's like, no. So now we've got the problem of Hikaru. He needs to give mutual satisfaction to Yoshiki. And I feel like Yoshiki, I don't think Yoshiki got the flashback now that I'm thinking about it, and people will probably have commented before I get to this point. I feel like Yoshiki did not get the flashback with Hikaru until he, I don't think he got the flashback with Hikaru until they were on the ground and it started to go up into his like brain and body, and maybe that's again what would cause and trigger it. We'll see. So yeah, he's like, you can't do stuff that makes other people uncomfortable. And I like that. I like that Yoshiki is telling Hikaru and explaining to him, because Hikaru doesn't know. He's not a human. So he's like, you have to be, there needs to be some mutual satisfaction. I'm going to talk about this. Yoshiki is obviously a male. But if you talk about a lot of women and men relationships, in a lot of them, there's discussion about how women are not satisfied during the relationships because, look, biologically, men are a lot easier to, and I'm going to get into some sexual talk here, biologically speaking, men are much easier to cause to achieve orgasm than a woman is, right? And so in a lot of stories, especially romance stories, there's discussion from female characters about how they're not satisfied in the relationship, or about how they fake it because they're not, being able to achieve orgasm naturally because they're just not being pleasured properly. And that's something that you see happen. It's a plot line in a lot of books. It's a plot line in a lot of shows. It's discussed online, things like that. But I find it interesting because if we're looking at it that way, I don't know in this relationship who the top or bottom would be. Yoshiki's not really expressed any sexual impetus such as that, and they're too young anyway, so that'll come down the road, I'm sure. But in this moment, it's almost like Yoshiki's like, well, all I'm doing is pleasuring you, but what are you doing for me? And so it kind of comes back to that conversation as well. So I don't know if Hikaru is going to take from this and go, well, how do I make Yoshiki feel good? Because, if they're going to do any sexual exploration, I like that they talk it out and they're communicating and they're saying, well, what do you like? What do you not like? What's okay and what's not okay? I think that's a healthy way to communicate in a relationship, especially when you're starting it out and literally feeling your way towards understanding how each other's bodies work and what makes each other comfortable and not comfortable. It's important to have those conversations and to communicate. So, yeah. Point being, I'm glad they're doing it. And he's like, do you hear me? And he's like, yeah, I hear you. And then Hikaru's like, I'm not lying to you. I don't know what to do. I said I would never lie to you. And then Yoshiki says that he believes him, kinda. And he's like, what do you mean, kinda? And that's when, and while they're talking, she says, we hear a little bit more of Rie's conversation. Here's what I mean by mixing. Even while you're still alive, your insides snuggle up to it. So, basically saying that then you become a part of it and it'll stay with you for life. I love the shot of Rie with the mirrors, and it's just like an endless, I love that trick when you look in the mirror, it's like an endless version of you, and she looks freaked out as she's telling him this. So, but again, we don't know what her circumstance is with the monster and the kid in the closet and everything. We don't know that yet. That's not been revealed to us yet. I think it's Tanaka, but we gotta see. We'll see. But anyway, so we have on here Rie saying that when you mix with something, you get cozy, and if it stays too long, it's a part of you for life. Now, does that mean that literally happened with Hikaru, and Hikaru snuggled up with the entity and then it took him over and now it's going to be a part of him for life and there's no coming back for Hikaru because he's technically died and now the monster is him? Or does it also mean that here's the thing though, too, again, we've talked about this in previous episodes, Rie's experience is with whatever is connected to her own experience, but it's not necessarily Hikaru, because Hikaru said he's never bonded with a human body before getting with the OG Hikaru before. So, it could be talking about another entity possessing and doing that. Could very well be that. My thing is, I think that there's this conversation that comes of this, of being like, is Yoshiki going to have to come to the determination of, is my sexuality and attraction towards the monster because of my own sexuality and attraction towards the OG Hikaru, or, you know, I could see where Rie would go to him at some point and be like, oh, you're only attracted to Hikaru because the monster's made you closer and you've mixed and now the monster wants you to stick with it for life and everything, and that's what's making you attracted. And I'm waiting for that conversation to happen, and I'm waiting for Yoshiki to admit that he's like, no, I'm gay. I was attracted to Hikaru before this entity ever showed up. This is not what you think it is. And I'm waiting for that conversation to happen because I think it will happen down the road, especially because as concerned as Yoshiki is about people in the town knowing about his sexuality, I think that conversation is going to happen, but I don't know. We'll see. He says it'll stay with you for life and you'll start attracting things from that other world, which we've already seen kind of happen in that the wig ghost shows up at their house this episode, and he starts noticing that the handprint from the entity is darker and darker on his hand. Now, I don't think anybody else can see it, because nobody else, you would think a giant handprint on your arm, they'd be like, what's that? But I don't think they notice it. I think it's literally just him that notices it. Is it darker than it was yesterday? And then she's like, that wig ghost is in there. And I like that the sister's like, I'm not going in that bathroom. I'm glad that she's just like, no. And the mom's like, well, you're not making any sense, right? And you get why the mom would be that way. Because the mom's like, ghosts aren't real. Like, you know, she doesn't. And here's the thing. The mom, again, is not from the village. She's from Tokyo. She's the outsider. And of course, she wouldn't believe in the ghost because that's not what, you know, that's not her culture, right? She's like, oh, ghost. Whereas if the sister told like somebody down the street about the ghost, they'd be like, oh my God, are you possessed? Like they'd be all in on it because this village worships a ghost, a deity. So anyway, I'm so enraptured by Tanaka. Every time Tanaka is on screen, I'm like, I want to know more about him. And he's so fascinating. So, okay. He is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's on his 5th cup of ramen, possibly 8th, because there's like 3 other cups there without lids. So he's possibly on his 8th cup of ramen. There's trash there. He's not keeping the place very well organized. We see the laptop, and there's something about the village. Now, the little shot of the village looks like the buildings that were in the flashback that Yoshiki saw. So maybe they're connected. Maybe Tanaka's doing research on the same. I don't know if Tanaka's blind. His eyes are weird. His eyes look weird. But I don't know if he's blind or not. Because how is he able to look at all this stuff if he was blind? I don't know. Maybe there's a ghost that he's using a ghost eyes. I don't know. I don't even know how this. Maybe the glasses allow him to see. I don't know. Maybe the glasses are, you know, spiritually inclined and allow him to see because he always wears them. He never takes them off. You tell me. I don't know how Stevie Wonder's doing it, but there's a graph there that shows like some kind of something has elevated and then has dropped off, so we don't know what that means. And then we see the little hamster. The little hamster's actually really cute, and when he like has her come over to him, it's super cute. So there's a little hamster wheel. There's some flowers there, just some basic groceries, and he's got a cot. I do feel for Tanaka a little bit because like his clothes are so dirty and he like hasn't changed them since he got there. And he's just like singing to the hamster. Again, his eyes look so glazed over. I don't know what to do with that. And it looks like something's grabbed him, right? Like he's been marked by something. So I don't know. The kid that the mom was holding in the flashback didn't look like it had been grabbed by the ghost, but then again, she had her arms wrapped around him, so we couldn't really see, right? But yeah, and then that's when he notices the other people there. They're like, how long are you gonna sit there playing with your pet? And he's like, well, hello, how are you? He's like, this is my partner. And he's like, fear not, I'm formulating a plan as we speak. I like these, like, you will treat her with respect. Something's gonna happen to that damn hamster, and I'm gonna be mortified and horrifically saddened. I just get this feeling something bad's gonna happen to the hamster, and I don't want anything to die, so I'm gonna be really upset when that happens. I'm not ready for that. But yeah, I feel like Tanaka's like, I am working on a plan, sir, so just leave me alone. And then they're like, okay. And so they see the sword there, and they're like, this won't cut a thing. And he's like, oh, it cuts fine, just not people. I love it. I love all the Exorcist lore. I am a big sucker for an Exorcist story, and I love all this lore about the hamster, like, detecting the spirits and everything. Yeah. And then him stretching, being like, you're right, Mr. Takada. Sitting here isn't going to get us anywhere. I'll let this one do the searching. So there's a little bit of hair in the bell. There's like a little bit of hair in the bell. I don't know where the hair is from. And it looks like it's from a collar. So I'm like, is there going to be like a hellhound that comes out in this next episode? Oh, I'm so excited. But I love the idea that he puts his blood on the bell and like desecrates this grave and leaves it there. I'm like, there's so much lore. I love it. Yes. More, please. So anyway, so Yoshiki goes and plays the crane game and gets this labor cat, which we're going to talk about the labor cat. And they're like, and I love that. I love how when Yoshiki gets excited when he wins the crane game, he's like, he doesn't want to brag, but he's like, oh wow, I outdid myself. And they're like, that was godly. He's like, how are you so good at crane games? Coward made me do them all the time. My brother's amazing at crane games. I am not. My brother can win them like every single time. He's like, the only flaw you have is that you're a hardcore emo person. And I love that Yoshiki's like, don't be dissing my emo-ness. Quit flattering me. I love it. So he's like, you call that flattery? He's like, he's always in a gloomy mood like that. We can't imagine him in a cheery mood. And then they talk about taking a dip in the pond to wash off his dark aura. And it's so funny, the image they have of Yoshiki being excited and having like his hair's like perfectly flattened and smoothed. And he looks so dorky. And he's like, I got a full 8 hours of sleep. And then they just laugh about it. He's like, give me back the doll. So then they talk about the labor cat and the two girls out to the side are holding the cat being like the harsh labor conditions at the hair growth product factory. Yeah, I love that they're talking about like the origins of labor cat. I'm like, what the fudge? It's real. The parody is really funny. And they're like, are you giving it to a girl? And he's like, oh no, don't be stupid. And they're like, you are giving it to a girl. So anyway, I like that they eat together. It's really cute to see them all hanging out and just having a good time by themselves. Like it's fun to see them hanging out together. And that's when Yoshiki brings up the wig ghost. And Hikaru's like, well, I'll go and help you take care of it. And the boy's like, gotta run and go get my doll. And so he's like, now, what's interesting is that you have the sister looking at this like model with the wig and she gets freaked out by it at the hair salon where the mom is working. And so at that point, they start asking about the ghost and why it's at the house. And so Yoshiki's asking Hikaru and he's like, what is a ghost doing at my house anyway? What the heck is it? And Hikaru's like, well, it's kind of like a stain or an impurity. And again, they're bound to show up wherever humans live. Now, the way that Hikaru describes it is that spirits and ghosts can just show up at anybody's house. And they just inhabit places where there could be impurities or spirits. Now, I want to bring up something very important. Right? Last episode, towards the very end, when we were at the summer festival, and I want to go back to this and kind of check something out real quick. When we were at the summer festival, right? What ended up happening, and I'm going to try to make sure my sound is off because I'm going to go back and look at something from, I think it was episode 1. I want to go back and check something out. I think it's when Tanaka first showed up. Okay. I wanted to go back because I was thinking about this, about the impurity. So we've not seen the dad hanging around too much, right? Last episode with the summer festival, he was piling wood up like he was transporting it. So I was like, what does he do? And so I went back to episode 1 because I remembered, I was like, okay, he's piling wood and stacking it up. Back in episode 1, we get like a second shot. It's like, I went back to episode 1. It's like at 13:45, there's the dad. He's the one cutting the wood down in the forest. He's the one cutting the wood down and chopping it up and doing all that with it. So it's him doing it. So here's the thing. Rie, and we're going to go back to that episode. Rie has been saying that bad things could happen to Yoshiki because he's hanging out with Hikaru. But there's a very strong chance, I mean, there's a chance that that's true, of course, but there's also a chance that the reason why the ghosts and stuff are showing up at Yoshiki's house are because of the dad. Because the dad is pissing off the ghosts in the forest by wrecking their environment, and they're pissed about it. And because Unuki or whatever isn't there to protect it, they're coming down and following him back home. So it would be interesting to see if it the dad's cause, right? Is the dad angering the spirits, and so they're following him, and then they're even more drawn because of Yoshiki's interaction with Hikaru. I don't know, but the dad may have a part to play in all of this, and that's going to be rather interesting. So we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But anyway, it says they're bound to show up wherever humans live. And Hikaru kind of makes the point of saying, well, humans kind of are stupid and mess up. So the ghosts kind of take advantage of that. Meanwhile, we see at this convenience store where he comes up and, like, at the store gives her the toy. Meanwhile, Yoshiki's like, well, in my house of all places, that sucks. He says, and you know what, Yoshiki, they're attracted to you for some reason. Now, we see the guy give her the toy, and she kind of like, he's like, because you're nice. And she laughs about it. So maybe she accepts the toy and she likes him back. We'll find out. Hikaru says that the ghosts are attracted to Yoshiki because he's nice. And I find it interesting. I wonder, Hikaru said he wouldn't lie to Yoshiki. So does he not know about the mixing thing? Or is it not as accurate as Rie says it is? Or what do we do? I'm curious. I don't know. I want to trust Rie. I want to trust her as an ally for Yoshiki. But I'm concerned with if she's going to say the wrong thing, or if she's misinformed, or if she's going to lead Yoshiki to have a belief he shouldn't have. I don't really know how to completely read her out yet, right? He's like, I'm not even nice. I don't get it. So I think the dad might have something to do with it, honestly. I think it could be, obviously, Hikaru and Yoshiki working together, but I think the dad could have a part to play as well. So they get to the bathroom, and he's like, no, it's there. It's one thing for them to pester me, but why are they going after you now? That seems like a very important line, because to me, that signals that what is actually the case is that Hikaru, I'm going to put H-E for Hikaru entity, deals with spirits all the time. He's like, I get it, but he's like, why are they pestering you now? So again, does he know about the mixing thing or not? Or is it the dad that's causing this to happen? Because if you think about it, the dad uses the shower too. So there could be a connection there. And he's like, what are you going to do? He's like, well, I'm going to go in and eat it. He's like, don't worry, I got this. He's like, I won't let it get you. Now, if Hikaru had just sat there and waited it out and not gone in whenever Hikaru was, confronted by it, would things have been different? Possibly. But when he goes to open the door, there's this like beacon of light, and this entity seems to like almost connect with him in that moment. And Yoshiki freaks out, and he's like, Hikaru, are you okay? And so Hikaru is like in the tub, like he's basically underwater. I feel like he kept his arm out so he could like get himself to come back up if he needed to, but he's trying to lure out the spirit towards him. And Yoshiki kind of messes it up by grabbing for him. And that's when we see it. That's when we see the entity and the hair. The hair comes at him instead of the entity and ends up possessing him, right? Which, I feel like the splash kind of almost looked like the splash from the OP of the entity. But yeah, Yoshiki gets drugged down, and he sees all of these different forms of Rie, of the classmates, of Hikaru. Most of them are Hikaru, as we have the glub, glub, glub. And it says, of course, for the second time it's coming inside of me. These entities need to stop coming inside of Yoshiki. He's just a boy! So then we have the grass squares, the rice squares, and we have all of these trees. These trees that look like brains. and we hear all of the different phrases from the town, right? So we hear these different phrases. They're like, take some Napa cabbage, which I think is from the barbecue they did in class. And then this, and he's like, what is this? And says, their son's a real dimwit, ain't he? Smart boy, huh? Have you decided on a college yet? You still won't cut those bangs. That kid can't even carry on a conversation. And he's like, how tall are you? You sprouted up. It's really scary because it's like all of the insecurities of the conversations that Yoshiki's had with the townspeople are all like reflecting back on him. And some of them are contradictory. Like some of them are like, well, why aren't you talking? And why aren't you doing this? And then some are like, how tall are you? Are you going off and doing things? Like it's all this contradictory conversation, and he gets overwhelmed. And then the brain smiling is the creepiest thing. Like the little brain cones. And then all these brains have like faces, and some of them look like Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen, and some of them look like CT scans. Creepy. Very creepy. I don't know what to make about this. And yeah, all these brain trees are like facing him with faces on there. That is creepy as hell, y'all. And they're like, what a darling little sister. Does she want to marry our oldest? I feel like that's a fear he's also projecting, is that he wants to get out of the town because he doesn't like the vibe of it and he doesn't like the people there. But he also has a fear of his sister getting stuck there, like her marrying into one of the families there and not being able to leave. Like he kind of has the privilege of being a male and he can just go wherever he wants, but he's worried his sister won't have that same privilege. I wonder, like, what is the brain cones? Brain trees. Why does it look like that? I want to know, but why? I want to say brains in the shape of cones. Does that make sense? I don't know why they're like pine cones. I don't know why they look like cones. I don't know why they're triangular. It's really weird. I do not understand why exactly they look like it, but it's very creepy. Yeah. And then that's when he gets to get out of the memory. He goes and suddenly is in front of a child, OG Hikaru. I also like the little drawing on the whiteboard is Super Mario Brothers. You can see the Goomba there. And I've played Super Mario Brothers enough to know that that's exactly one of the levels. Like you can see Mario, the Goombas. You can see the little, the blocks and everything, the little cacti guy. Like you can see it drawn on the board, which is super cute. I love the Mario reference. But we go back to this memory in like this little shed, and Hikaru is mad because Crowley, the little bird they took in, has died. And dead birds, I cannot stand dead birds. I don't like dead animals in general. I hate looking at dead animals. They creep me out. But he's like, the bird we were going to take care of has died. And he says, your fault that Crowley is dead. And so Yoshiki has this memory of them arguing when they were kids. He's like, it was your turn to feed them. It's a living creature. He's like, there's nothing we could have done. He's like, you're making excuses. And he's like, well, it's your fault too. You forgot to feed him before. And he's like, but it was your turn to feed him today. And he's like, but it was one time. And he's like, well, he's dead because of it. And then they turn back into kids. And he's like, well, you're a sicko. And he's like, you're a sicko. He's like, I took better care of it than you did. So basically we go back to this memory where something has died. Something has died. But it was because of the both of them. It was the both of them messing with something they shouldn't. Which is in no way, shape, or form a metaphor for what's going on in this series. In no way is this referencing that the OG Hikaru and Yoshiki are messing with an entity that they shouldn't, but here we are. But yeah, essentially, you have Yoshiki saying, well, just because I didn't feed it this once, you didn't feed it the time before. They're both responsible. And they've both messed with something in nature that they shouldn't have messed with. And that's a direct reflection upon now OG Hikaru and Yoshiki have messed with something in nature with this entity that they shouldn't have touched. And I don't know if subconsciously it's addressing maybe Yoshiki's fear that something will happen to this entity and it will also affect the OG Hikaru and the entity and he'll lose them both. Maybe it'll come back to that. But I feel like this is a good broader representation of the series as a whole because, look, at this point, there's no going back. Yoshiki and Hikaru are now in the position that they are. They're working together. They've mixed. There's nothing you can undo with that. And so it's like, but now what do you both need to do? Well, the answer is to take responsibility and move forward and hope that the people you care about don't end up like Crowley, right? You can blame one another all you like, but at the end of the day, that doesn't matter. What matters is that the two of you have responsibilities now with what's happened, right? And then there's no blaming you or you, because both of you are cowards. If you do that, you've both got to move forward. And so then like grabbing each other and holding each other down, and then it cuts back to reality where it's making Yoshiki being possessed do that to Hikaru. Yoshiki possessed is terrifying. That's freaking scary. No thank you. With those giant eyes and everything. Nope. Which, his eyes being glazed over like that, I'm like, is Tanaka possessed by an entity? We don't know. We don't know. The fact that Tanaka couldn't go through the barrier makes me wonder. The fact that Tanaka, he set up the barrier supposedly, but he can't go through it, which neither could Hikaru. So is Tanaka possessed? Tis the question. Tis the question, right? So then Hikaru realizes that Yoshiki has been possessed and he's freaking out. I feel like Hikaru, the longer that he tries to fight with the spirit, the more like the blood comes down his nose and everything, which he's using Hikaru's body, and whenever he bleeds, the substance comes out. So I don't know. They've not made it distinct like what the limits of Hikaru's body are yet, and what, because obviously, I mean, so we think Hikaru is not impervious to being damaged. It's literally a human's body that he's invaded and stolen. So you would think like if he was hit by a semi, what would we do with that? He'd have to heal, right? He talks about when he was possessed, he had to heal and it took like a week to get over it. So he has somewhat regenerative abilities, but they're not infinite, or they're not, they're not unlimited. And so he manages to get out. Obviously, I do like that both characters, like the buttons come off their shirts and everything. Like there is a little bit of a connotation with that happens as they're like fighting each other. And then, Yoshiki's still possessed and Hikaru holds them back. Oh my gosh. And he's like, it's inside Yoshiki, using him as a shield. And then he's like, damn you bit me. Almost, the whole biting thing, you could argue like a Omegaverse claiming thing, but that's on the back of the neck, not the arm. But I do find it interesting that you have Yoshiki has this arm with the mark, and now Hikaru has this arm with the bite mark. So they both kind of marked each other in a way. But I do love the idea that Hikaru just like takes Hikaru. Oh, you can see it from the inside of the mouth where he's biting the arm. It like shoots the ghost out. It like makes him not be possessed, which is badass. I love that. It pushes it like, yeah, shot the ghost back out. And then Yoshiki's like, what the hell happened? How nice that you can shoot a ghost out of somebody's head without blowing their brains out. That's great. And then, of course, we get the trope of them being in the bathtub together, Although, the way that it's positioned here would lead you to believe that Yoshiki is the one on top. But I'm not going to get too much into it because, again, they're just teens. Let them grow up a little bit. But, yeah. And then Hikaru's like, okay. He's like, I'm glad it's over and you're okay. And that's when Yoshiki sees the bite mark that he literally left on Hikaru's skin, which that's going to take some time to heal. But, So the ghost did not get destroyed. It just, it looked up and saw Hikaru being like, I'm going to eat you if you don't get the hell out. And it left. And it even, cut his cheek and everything. That look from Hikaru, and it vamooshed. But yeah. And so he's like, well, I'm glad you're okay. So yeah, I love having the little shot of their underwear and stuff hanging up. It's cute. And then, of course, I also like the body language of Yoshiki's wrapped the shirt around his legs, to give him further protection, right? I think the shirt, okay, clearly Hikaru is wearing one of Yoshiki's shirts because Yoshiki wears that shirt in the ED. So, which is cute. He's like, your resistance to those things is weak. And he's like, I guess it's kind of my fault as well, but it's a good thing you were able to resist a little. I feel like that's such an interesting moment because in the memory that Yoshiki had, OG Hikaru was very adamant that it wasn't his fault and was arguing and making it to where it had to be Yoshiki's fault and they fought over it. And here, Entity Hikaru was instantly like, yeah, that was my fault. I should have known better. And it's a nice little contrast between the characters. But that's when they were kids. So there's nothing to say that OG Hikaru wouldn't have gotten to the point that the Entity is now with saying that, you know, it's partially his fault and everything. It's just interesting to follow up that scene with this scene. And so Yoshiki's like, yeah, but the only thing I remember is my hand drowning him. Which, what a moment to gain consciousness and realize you were drowning your best friend, even though you know it wasn't your best friend, but it was at the same time. He's like, I can't stop thinking about it. That hand's done a lot of things. That hand has stuck itself inside Hikaru. That hand's been messing with chicken. That hand's been like trying to drown people. That hand's done a lot, you know? And he's like, what if I end up killing him someday? Well, that's an ominous foreshadowing. He could. He might, you know, if he gets possessed by another ghost. Yeah, he could, but Hikaru doesn't seem too worried about it. He's like, that was a close one. I'm so glad you came back. I swore to protect you and this happened. It makes me want to cry. And I'm glad that Hikaru's saying something about it, being like, I didn't get to do what I wanted to. And I'm realizing that I was this all-powerful entity, but in this human body, I can only do so much. So, I'm glad that they're both confronting this with one another, which is good. And then Yoshiki says, why would you go that far? And he's like, I don't know why. I just spring into action. It's called love. That's called love when you do things, when you spring into action without thinking about it. It's called love. I don't know. Those of you that are Baku Deku shippers probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But yes, I just spring into action. Yeah. And so then we have the mom and the sister pulling up and he's like, you want to go catch some frogs? And he's like, no, that's too hillbilly. And I like this conversation. So again, we were talking about like, where do we go to from here, right? And so they have this conversation where Hikaru's like, you really hate the sticks, don't you? And Yoshiki's like, I don't hate it here, but there are parts of it I don't like. And he's like, there's stuff here you can't find in the city, which is true. I like the country for the atmosphere. I love it for being able to see the stars, for it being quiet. I like that about it a lot. And it's out in nature. I love that. And Yoshiki's like, I know it's not all bad. I just don't think I belong here. And Hikaru's like, well, just wait till I build our mansion in the woods. And he's like, well, you think everything is fun, don't you? And Hikaru's like, well, yes, of course. To me, that makes me think that even if they leave the town, Hikaru will find other things to do and will go with Yoshiki. And I definitely think that it would be healthy for Yoshiki to get out of this particular town. Maybe live out in the country in another town. In another place that's not possibly a cult. Maybe go live there. And man, Hikaru loves hamburger steak. Get that boy some hamburger steak and he's all about it. And he's like, I'm a growing boy. I'm going to be taller than Yoshiki. And that's when Yoshiki thinks, what if that ghost had attacked my mom or Kaoru? So that leads me to believe that Yoshiki is thinking like, okay, there are a couple things I can do. One, I can break up with Hikaru. I don't think that's going to happen. Two, I can have Hikaru help me to make sure the ghosts don't attack my mom or sister. More likely. Or he can be like, three, how do I get to where I can protect my mom and sister as much as I can in case if Hikaru's not there? So I feel like the latter two are what they're going to need to focus on moving forward because I don't think that Hikaru's going anywhere. I don't think that's going to happen unless they do like any other rom-com where they have a stupid breakup for no reason and then they come back in the final act. You know, if that happens, then it's going to be like, oh yes, not a BL indeed. But anyway, I kid. But yeah. And so Hikaru's like, why don't you sit over here and eat with us? My legs ache every day from growing pains, you know. So Yoshi's like, I'm going to keep growing. Don't say that. You know. Interesting. He's like, what are you, a plant? Before long, your brother's going to be 3 meters tall. And Yoshiki reflects and says he's not Hikaru. He's not even human. If things stay like this, maybe he can live a regular human life. Yoshiki wants this to work. Yoshiki wants entity Hikaru to be able to stay because it allows him to, I mean, it's kind of selfish. He gets to be with technically his best friend, but also because he kind of likes this entity. He wants to see where it's going to go. So you never know. I don't know if Hikaru's, can that body age with the entity inside of him? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to age or not. But, you know, this entity's like, this hamburger steak's going to be awesome. And Yoshiki kind of just smiles at that. For this emo kid to smile and be like, okay. All right. I wonder if by the very end of this season, he's going to cut those bangs or if he's just going to let it grow out. I don't know. I love the irony that his mom's a hairdresser and that he's not letting her cut his hair. That's funny. So then we have the final scene. And we get to this little shrine. The hamster takes him to a shrine. Okay. Or no, there's like an owl going after a little gerbil. Anyway. So then there is, which the owl going after the gerbil very much feels like Tanaka looking for this entity. And that's kind of the same thing. So there's a tiny shrine with like a little offering plate that's been stuck out. And he's like, here it is. And he's like, it's a tiny shrine. Was it for a pet that died? And so he's like, take that. Like, he just starts desecrating it. It's like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the man holds him back. And he's like, cut it out, you bastard. And there was like a flash of something. And I want to see what the flash was. And yeah, so the hamster starts like, I think it's still down there. Okay. So he brings out the knife. And cuts his hand with the blood. So, okay. And he like lets the blood jingle around in it. And then throws it at the stone. And I want to see what flashed. Oh, okay. Something flashed. And it was creepy. Oh, that's freaking no! No! It's evil. No! It's creepy as hell. Why are there feet and a creepy head? Why? No. No, no, no. Show, why are you creepy like that? Why you gotta do this? No. Here's the thing. Tanaka's bringing up all these dead ghosts and sending them after people. Does Rie need to know about him? This little guy is like a hunting dog. I was expecting the image to be of a hunting dog. No, not a creepy decapitated head and legs. No. He's like, it'll chase after it. Impurities like these should cling to it quite nicely. So basically Tanaka's gonna follow where the impurities go to, and that's gonna be like, you know, smoke them out, right? It might be moving around. So we need a keen nose to sniff it out. And then this guy says, I have a feeling this man is bad news for our village. I think he's gonna destroy this place someday. But then deep down, the guy's like, maybe I want him to. The guy's like, maybe this place is terrible and I want him to burn it down. But the guy's like, I don't have enough courage to do it myself. So maybe we can have this third party do it. And then if things go awry, just blame him. Crazy. Crazy talk. And I've talked for nearly an hour about this show. Oh my God. So yeah, so this episode was not as much like symbolic breaking down of things as just like an actual little like kind of Scooby-Doo villain case, but I really liked that. I liked it about it. Honestly, if you're going to have a series carry on as the manga is ongoing, you need things like this to happen. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see where we go to from here and what we end up getting. So yeah. But next week, we're going to be halfway through the series. Wild. Absolutely wild. So, in any case, with that being happening, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. I'm so excited to see what happens next week. But I will be back then as we will talk about episode 6 of the summer Hikaru died. Bye.